Greeting. Welcome to our Delta Sigma Theta community event. We are delighted you chose to be with us today. We want you to have a wonderful experience. Please be assured your safety as well as your enjoyment of the event is our utmost concern. Please take a moment, look around, and identify the nearest two exits. Whether in a virtual setting at home or physically in some formal venue, we must always be Delta ready. So please identify two exits in your current location in case of the need of an emergency evacuation. Also, during this COVID pandemic, even if you are vaccinated and boosted, please remember to wear your mask, wash your hands, and always walk and stand 6 feet apart from others. Please enjoy our event and continue to be safe. Welcome. Legal notice. All content shared, displayed, or otherwise presented during this meeting, including but not limited to sorority manuals, ceremonial rituals, and other materials that contain Delta's trademarks, copyrights, or any other intellectual property, is owned and controlled by Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated and is prohibited by law. Participants shall not photograph, video record, screen capture, or otherwise copy Delta materials to modify or reproduce for personal or third-party use. Participant further understands, agrees, and acknowledges to be solely liable for any damages in law or in equity resulting from violation of applicable laws and shall be subject to disciplinary action according to the Member Code of Conduct and any other related agreement. Legal notice.
We'd just like to take this moment to show our gratitude, Lord. We thank you for allowing us to be here to learn, to be empowered as to how important it is for us to vote. Lord, we thank you for the speakers that are about to impart upon us. And Lord, I thank you for all of the people that have joined us here today. We ask you to protect us, Lord. Teach us, Lord, and help us to grow so that we can empower others. This I ask in Jesus' name, amen, and thank God.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining the 2023 AGAC Voter Awareness Webinar, one of its first webinars to be held by the AGAC to emphasize the significance of voter awareness for expats, and we are excited about this event. At this time, we will introduce our National Executive Committee, our International President and Chair of the National Board of Directors, Sora Elsie Cook Holmes, our National First Vice President and Chair of the National Scholarships and Standards, Sora Cheryl Turner, National Second Vice President, Sora Sadie Reed, the National Secretary, Dr. Joy Moore, and the National Treasurer, Sora Rosalind Glenn. At this time, we will introduce our Eastern Region leadership, our Regional Director, Sora Rosie Allen Herring, and our Regional Representative, Sora Jera Holdip. At this time, we will recognize our Arabian Gulf Alumni Chapter Executive Committee, our President, Sora Deidre White, our First Vice President, Sora Dr. Juanita Dunois, our Second Vice President, Sora Dr. Audrey Lee, our Recording Secretary, Sora Margaret Dean, our Corresponding Secretary, Sora Aisha Lusk, our Financial Secretary, Sora Rashonda Wells, and our Treasurer, Sora Aisha Alford. At this time, we will recognize our Political Awareness Involvement in Social Action Committee. The chairman of the Social Action Committee is myself, Cassandra Riley. Our co-chair is Sora Samantha Boswell. Committee members, Sora Chieko Brown, Sora Avery Henry, Soror Aisha Lusk, and Soror Alexine Profis. At this time, we'll have our welcome, Soror Chieko Brown.
Greetings. On behalf of the Arabian Gulf Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated and the members of the Social Action Committee, we are delighted to welcome you to our voter awareness webinar. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. And at this time, we will have an introduction of our illustrious panelists for the 2023 Voter Awareness Webinar.
Ms. Sharon Sear is a consul at the U.S. Consulate General in Dubai, United Arab Emirates. She has served at U.S. missions in Mexico, Italy, and Benin. Prior to joining the U.S. Foreign Service, Ms. Sear managed international programs at the headquarters of Rotary International, the association of more than 30,000 Rotary clubs worldwide. During a 20-year career with Rotary, she was responsible for international exchange student programs, affiliate youth clubs, disaster relief, community development activities, and the Global Partnership Portfolio. She has been a speaker at Rotary Club meetings and international events in Europe, Asia, Africa, Australia, and Latin America. Dr. Latanya Martin Rogers is originally from Delray Beach, Florida. She was raised by a single mother, 2 very loving grandparents, and a host of extended family members. Dr. Martin Rogers attended the local public schools in her area prior to graduating from Spanish River Community High School in Boca Raton, Florida. She was accepted into Morris Brown College to pursue a Bachelor of Science degree in elementary education. Upon completing her studies, she began working as a classroom teacher and has since served the educational needs of our community's children for over 19 years. She has a master's degree in public administration and completed a Doctor of Philosophy degree in educational leadership. Throughout her career as a full-time educator in the local public school system, Dr. Martin Rogers has been singled out on numerous occasions to develop and manage special projects. She also contributes to management teams and has become known for her creativity and resourcefulness. Through her relationships with her students, parents, and colleagues, one of her personal goals is to always contribute to their positive growth and learning experiences. Dr. Martin Rogers has a reputation of being a skilled, concerned teacher, as well as a mentor and friend who is firmly committed to the value of education and the importance of the teaching profession, which is something that she views with a sense of pride. She has made a conscious decision to work for her community and is committed to excellence. Aside from her career, Dr. Martin Rogers is a proud member of many organizations, including Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, the Morris Brown College National Alumni Association, the Troy State University Alumni Association, board member of Sheltering Grace Ministries, Order of the Eastern Star Prince Hall Affiliation, Ruth Cell member and choral choir member of Friendship Community Church, and a chartering member of the National Council of Negro Women. In her spare time, she enjoys spending time with her family, traveling, reading, thrift store shopping, and listening to music.
Amazing. Thank you so much for the introduction. And we are excited to have the panelists here, Dr. Martin Rogers, as well as Ms. Sharon Sear. Thank you so much for attending today. So before we get started, I thought that it would be fitting just to have our panelists briefly discuss their current positions. So Dr. Martin Rogers, can you discuss your position as a consulwoman from the city of East Point, Georgia, and the aspects that you enjoy the most?
All right. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good morning, everyone. I am Dr. Latanya Martin Rogers. By day, I am a public school educator, which I thoroughly enjoy. But maybe about I've always been heavily involved in my community, and that is because in the community from which I come from, we always have someone standing in the gap. So early on, I knew the value of public service and just standing in the gap for those that are less fortunate. So my career, my chosen career, is that of a public school educator. However, I am a former council member in the city of East Point who is running now to be council member again. I thoroughly enjoy politics, but I think what I enjoy most about politics is the ability to be in a leadership position and thoroughly stand in the gap for people that may be less fortunate, people that may not have the wherewithal, but just being an advocate and a voice for persons of color, for women, for children, just for the less fortunate. So I know that this is work, but this is work that I thoroughly enjoy. So I'm currently running for the East Point City Council member, Ward D seat. About 8 years ago, I did resign from the seat to take care of an out-of-state family member, which is my dear grandmother, who was instrumental in my upbringing. But I am now running again for a previous seat. So I thoroughly enjoy politics. I thoroughly enjoy being a community advocate. And I believe that one of the things that I try to live by is that if you're always on the side of right, then you don't have to worry about making the wrong decision. Thank you. And thank you so much for this opportunity.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your political background with us as well as your professional background. We greatly appreciate it. And at this time, we'll have United States Consulate Sharon Sear. She is currently the consulate at the U.S. Embassy in Dubai. And Ms. Sharon will share with us her current position and what she enjoys most about being a consulate of the U.S. Embassy.
Thank you so much for the introduction and letting me come be part of your group this evening. Public service, I think, is a theme that runs through my family. Firefighters, nurses, teachers, people who are used to helping others, perhaps on their most difficult days. And that's what a consul does. Most fundamentally, our jobs overseas are to protect American citizens wherever they are. And so we can help if someone loses their passport, if someone has a new baby born while they're living overseas, get a passport for that baby, or if something really terrible has happened, if a loved one dies overseas, we can help people figure out all of the necessities in that community where they may not live if they were just on vacation, or if their family members are back in the United States and they're the only one living overseas. I think probably the time you see consuls in movies the most often is when we go see people in jail, which is not the most exciting part of a job. Hollywood makes it seem that way, but I think it's really a valuable service we provide to our fellow citizens, and they know that they can always call the consulate or the embassy and we'll be there to assist however we can. So I think that's one of my favorite parts of the job. I meet people from all over the world, from all backgrounds, and I always was looking for an international career. And I had an international career before I started working for the government, but I love the fact that with this career, I can take my family with me. And so instead of traveling and my family stays home, I'm here in Dubai with my husband and my daughter. And then they get that experience of what it's like to be an American living overseas, like so many in your chapter. So thank you so much for letting me be here tonight.
Yeah. Thank you. I just want to say, wow, and I think you both are impressive, and I'm sure that a wealth of knowledge and insight will be shared today with our international community, as well as our domestic attendees as well. And so it is understood that we are currently in a non-presidential election year. Yes, but it's clear, as we have seen the impact, that the smaller statewide elections have a huge impact on the United States of America. And I just felt that, this webinar was the perfect platform so that we can dispel myths, we can ask questions, especially for those of us who are living abroad. How does this process work? What do we need to do? And from a domestic standpoint, we can hear from a council member who understands the small but very important details and the big details that we need to focus on and still be aware of. So I'm just so happy that you all are here. I want to pose this question to Dr. Martin Rogers. Can you provide us an overview of key issues that are likely to be at the forefront of this election cycle? You're muted, okay.
All right, so I'd like to talk about this from from the national level and then versus the local election level. So the economy has consistently been the top issue for voters this year. This is at the national state level. And the issue of democracy and many other voter issues differ from party to party. So in one party, the major issues were immigration and violent crime. But then in another party, their issue may be healthcare and women's rights, but there's still the issue of racism, human rights, and violence against LGBTQ plus population of people in the United States. At the local level, since our election is a local election and I've been out on the campaign trail, and I guess what most people don't understand is that local elections matter more than anything. Our mayor, our council members have more of an influence on those things that we experience in life from a day-to-day issue, our infrastructure, our environment, our quality of life. Local elections matter if individuals really want to have something done. I mean, our state in United States elections, they matter, but locally, I would encourage everyone to get involved in local politics because that is where we really see the ball begin to move on issues that affect and impact us locally. So as I've been out on the campaign trail, most people just want a clean city. Most people just want quality restaurants that they can go to without taking their money to, let's say, an Alpharetta or downtown Atlanta. I live in the city of East Point. We are really beginning to see smaller cities outside of Atlanta take off with their economic development. The city of Hapeville, Georgia, they have shops and restaurants, new homes that they're building. So many people at the local level, they just want a clean city. They want a nice park that they can take their children to. They want schools that they can enroll their children into. They just want a decent quality of life at the local level. So those are just some issues that are impacting us here in the city of East Point, Georgia, and also nationally.
I have to agree. It sounds, like a small, a small issue, but it's major. So when you discuss the economy and immigration and flourishing cities that are, in the surrounding areas, all of this has a significant impact, but it all results into the voting process. You understand? So I think that is critical. So Ms. Sears, I have a question for you, but it kind of ties into what Dr. Martin Rogers says. So how can American citizens abroad stay connected and engage with the political process in our home districts and states? So for example, Dr. Martin Rogers is in Atlanta, outside of Atlanta and East Point. But for those of us who are living in the GCC, Dubai, Qatar, Saudi, Oman, Kuwait, and Bahrain, how do we stay connected with the process?
It's a great question. And when I was listening to Dr. Martin Rogers talk about how important local politics are, that's probably the biggest challenge when you're overseas, right? You don't get home as often as maybe you'd like, and you feel sort of disconnected from what's going on, unless you're someone who makes time to read the local papers and find out what those issues and follow them. But the good news is the United States government makes it easy for American citizens living overseas to vote in all of their elections. Depending on the state, and this is where we're unique compared to a lot of countries, because we're a federal system and every state has a completely different process for voter registration and regulations. Some states make it easy for the citizens living overseas to vote. Some states are perhaps not as easy. I'm a resident of Nevada, and I can email my ballot to them. They're super accommodating. It's very, very easy. So if you're not from Nevada, if you go to the website fvap.gov, that's the Federal Voter Assistance Program, you can get a federal postcard so that you can register to vote if you're from a state that doesn't facilitate it as much. A lot of our government systems, including at the federal level, are designed with the idea that an American is born in the United States and never leaves. It's really sort of an old-fashioned system where it doesn't account for, newly naturalized citizens who maybe are new arrivals, or Americans born overseas who've never lived in the United States. So the Federal Voter Assistance Program makes it easy to register to vote in all elections. If you sign up for the STEP program, that's the Smart Travel Enrollment Program, you'll get during the voting season, including in non-presidential years, you'll get an email message from your embassy or consulate, wherever you live, telling you how you can drop your ballot off if you live if your residence is in a state that requires it to be mailed in. So you can actually come, you don't have to figure out, if I'm living in the Emirates or if I'm living in Qatar, how do I mail something to Atlanta or Nevada so that it gets there? The challenge can be getting it in time. So, always pay attention to what the deadlines are in your official state of residence, when you need to register to vote, when you need to request the ballot. Is it an easy state where you can email it? Is it a more difficult state where you have to send in the paper ballot by mail? But we can help you do that at the consulate or the embassy closest to you. And then the last thing is, if your state sends you a ballot by mail and it takes a while for your mail to find you overseas, you can also request what's called the federal write-in ballot. And so it's a federal ballot, but it can be used in your state elections as well. And so you can get that from that same website, and you can send that federal write-in ballot so that your vote will be counted. So there's lots of ways. The best way, even though I'm here representing the federal government, is to look at your state of residence and see if it's an easy or difficult state. And then you can always go to the Federal Voting Assistance Program to get more information.
Thank you, thank you. You made mention of a few websites, and we will share these websites in the chat, as well as post the webinar. But as expats, it is very important that we understand the process, and the times and the dates that it's necessary that you do these things. So my next question for you, Ms. Sears, is the challenges and barriers that the U.S. citizens abroad commonly face during the election cycle. So for example, you're from Nevada, you can email your ballot in. Myself, I'm from the great state of Georgia, and we have to mail our ballot in. So are there any challenges that U.S. citizens abroad that is faced, and what is being done, if anything, by the embassy to address those challenges?
Certainly. I think the biggest difficulty is mail, right? How do you get your mail delivered to you when you're a private US citizen living overseas? Do you have a family member who's forwarding things to you? Are you able to maybe take a downloaded ballot, but then you physically mail that ballot in, depending on the state? So the ability to be able to drop things off at the embassy to be mailed through our official diplomatic mail is the best thing. diplomatic mail is not always the fastest, right? It's extremely reliable, but you want to give yourself an extra few weeks before the deadline for your state. And I think, any close race, when you see news coverage, when I'm serving overseas, all diplomats serving overseas are required to be nonpartisan and neutral 24/7 when we're overseas. So the next comments are in that line. But when you think of any close race, and then the news coverage talks about, it was 566 votes to 560, and we're still counting and we're still waiting. And sometimes they'll talk about military and diplomatic and mail-in ballots they're waiting to get from overseas. So, I mean, every vote counts, and even more so in those local elections. And, it's the obligation of the voter registration administration to accept those ballots when they come in. It's the obligation of the voter to try to figure out as much as possible what those deadlines might be. So we try to remove those barriers. We do outreach in both senatorial years, congressional years, presidential years. Not as much focus on local elections, but to make sure people are aware that they can exercise their right to vote.
Agreed. My next question is going to be for Dr. Martin Rogers, but it kind of ties into some of the challenges, Ms. Sear, that you just mentioned about understanding for us, it would be the voter turnout process, right? Whereas we go to the embassy, we have to adhere to the timings, and we watch the calendar to ensure that we're submitting our ballots on time. So for Councilman Rogers, I would ask specifically, can you discuss the importance of the voter turnout and what efforts are being made to encourage voter participation? So from our standpoint abroad, we're watching the calendar, we're making sure that we go to the embassy, we're going to the websites, we're doing all these things, but it still has an impact when we're counting, looking at the news, and we know that we've mailed our ballot in, right? And it's still being counted. It also has an impact on the count and your face-to-face voter turnout. So can you just share the importance of the voter turnout process?
Yes, because I was a part of helping to assist turn out the vote, but almost 92 million eligible Americans did not vote in 2016 for the presidential elections. For the nation's democracy to function properly and for the government to provide fair representation, all eligible Americans must have the opportunity to vote and be encouraged to do so. In the state of Georgia, there have been many local grassroots organizations. You all may have heard of some of them, but these organizations are led by women of color that turned out voters. Organizations like the New Georgia Project, which I was a part of, Fair Fight, the NAACP, all focused on voter mobilization efforts for seniors, our college students, for those communities that were less impacted by voting, and formerly incarcerated individuals and rural voters, because a lot of rural voters are out there, but they just are not educated that their vote really matters. So I think that it was a big part of just mobilizing everyone, touching everyone. In the space that I worked in with Fair Fight, we encouraged our pastors in the church to let everyone know about voting. We had people in front of grocery stores to let everyone know about voting. We had small groups of people that were willing to put boots on the ground and go and door knock, not only in rural areas, but in communities that have just kind of been forgotten about. There were boots on the ground that on Saturdays, we would go out at maybe 9 o'clock in the morning and do sign holding. Are you registered to vote? We had people making an impact at train stations, registering people to vote. So it really took a great deal of mobilizing people in getting the message out and educating people, because most young people don't believe that their vote really matters. So it's that whole educating piece and letting them know that your one vote, it really does matter, and it really does make a difference if you are voting and if you are just a part of the process. So it took a wide community effort of boots on the ground. We drop off 10 people in a community that targeted registered voters and people that weren't registered to vote, or people that hadn't voted. You have types of voters that you have voters that vote in national and state elections, but some people don't participate in your local elections. So it just took a great effort to get up, mobilize, and just target people everywhere: grocery stores, dollar stores, theaters, downtown, any area where there were people, we were mobilized up and ready to go.
Wow, that's amazing. Some of the areas that you just mentioned as to where you meet the voters, it is absolutely amazing. You don't think about some of those things because we just think about the larger voter registration drives, but not some of the key areas that you just mentioned. So that's quite impressive.
I forgot to mention, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention, we even registered students that were turning 18 at their local high school. So there was a big voting rally done at our metropolitan high schools to register high school students to vote. And students can go to their local library in their school to register to vote. So we targeted those high school students that were 17 and a half that would be turning 18 right before the election.
Oh, no worries. I love that you have a process when you said that the students, they're just turning 18. This will be their first time voting in the election, and they're registering to vote, and it's not being delayed in any way, or so that they'll say, oh, I'll do it, next week, or I'll do it next month. And then the next thing the election cycle is upon us, and they've not done that. So I think that is a great step forward to how do you reach those first time voters. I do want to just make mention to the attendees that if you have any questions for Dr. Martin Rogers or Ms. Sharon Sears, please place your questions in the chat, and we will save a few minutes at the end of the webinar for those questions to be asked of Ms. Sharon and Dr. Martin Rogers. Dr. Martin, I do have one question for you. I want to know, have you noticed that the priorities of the voters have changed since the last election cycle? Since you're there in the US, so your feet are on the ground, you're engaged with the community. Have you noticed that their priorities for the voters have changed at all, or if it's remained the same?
I believe that some of the priorities have really remained the same, but I think the biggest thing that has changed in voting is people's ability to access and just put misinformation out there. I think that is the greatest thing that has happened just in our electoral process. I mean, I like the internet, but I really don't like the internet because the internet gives everyone a platform, and oftentimes uneducated people are just putting information out there, and then we are left trying to find out whether it is factual information or whether it is not true information. But I think that the greatest thing or the greatest change that has happened is that it's just so many distractions out there that you have to weed through those distractions. Exactly. So it's becoming more, I think someone described it more or less as a circus. But as an educated voter, you do have to do your own research on candidates, research on the issues. But every day, if you turn on the news, we are bombarded by something that is happening at the national level. And only if you turn on, well, if you turn on your local news, you are still bombarded with that. So I think that it is up to voters to educate themselves on the facts of what is happening. But our priorities haven't changed, but I just feel like oftentimes we are distracted. We are distracted by those who we have elected to assist us in getting the work done for the people. It has become just a distraction.
It's so interesting that you say a distraction, because my question is, how do we as voters best educate ourselves? So if we are abroad and we are unfortunately relying on the internet, right, or the campaign ads to make an informed decision, and as well as that candidate's political history and everything that they've done, how can we as voters best educate ourselves and inform our friends and family members on the candidates and the issues? Anything?
I would say talk to our friends and family. Talk to the people that are here in the United States that are engaged in this process, and you're definitely going to have to do your own research. Find political groups that are grassroots groups that you believe in their mission statement. We have lots of organizations that are out there, but you're going to have to do your own research and stay connected. I know that we have people there that are there from Georgia. Tap into Andre Dickens. He has Twitter. See what he's talking about. He's a mayor of Atlanta. Our mayor, Mayor Deanna Holiday Ingram, who's also a soarer, she's very active on the political websites. Tap into your Congress people. What are they talking about? Are they talking about the issues, or are they being a distraction? Are they doing the work of the people, or are they being a distraction? And the other thing is, our Congress people and elected officials that have elected us to be in office, they should be communicating with the voters on their own. They should be sending, I mean, you can send a text message. I got one from Nikema Williams, who's my representative, the other day, and it wasn't a general text message, but she was like, "Hey, I need your help to help me fight for XYZ in Congress. Please call this number and let them know how you feel." So there's no reason for our political representation not to reach out to us. I mean, the relationship should be 50-50, right? We should do our own we should do our own research, but also the people that we elect in office should be reaching out to us, letting us know their platform, letting us know that they need us. So it works both ways, but definitely talking to people that are that are experiencing what is happening in the city where you are going to cast your vote.
Agreed. Sometimes during the election process, you see the primary ballot, and there's 20 people on this ballot, and you really have to have done your level of homework to ensure that you're selecting the right person, and then that will reduce it down for the actual election time. So I agree. We have to be well informed from that aspect. Ms. Sharon, are there any specific initiatives in place to ensure that U.S. citizens that are abroad are informed about the election and have access to voting? Is the U.S. Embassy raising some type of awareness outside of this webinar, for example, as to what we're doing? What role does the U.S. Embassy have in keeping the expats informed of the election cycle?
Thanks for the question. It's funny, a lot of what we do at embassies and consulates overseas in terms of representing the American people abroad is promote our values of free and fair elections and democratic process with our host governments. So a lot of our focus is not back towards our own citizens, but it's towards the citizenry of the host governments. And that can often be what the work of diplomacy is. With respect to providing services to American citizens, though, I think we're always very interested in encouraging voting. And so voter outreach is a key portfolio. There's always an officer assigned to be the voting officer at every post, no matter how small or how big. And you'll see social media posts that come out saying, you know, make sure you vote, register to vote, you can vote from overseas. Because sometimes people don't know, you know, they think, oh, I'm away from home. I can't go to the poll that I would normally go to at the high school or in the community center. You know, how am I going to make that happen? And so to try to at least inform people in that way, while we can't, as members of the Foreign Service, be engaged in any partisan activity, private Americans can. And so if you're in a place where there's a lot of American expats, you could form a partisan group and do lots of voter outreach and awareness activities with the groups. And then if there are representatives from multiple parties, then the embassy or consulate can host an event. So we can't host an event for just one group, but if there's both groups, then we can host an event. And a lot of times we'll do things like election watch parties, because that serves both purposes, right? You could invite a Democratic group of Americans, a Republican group of Americans, and then you can invite host government officials to watch that this is how we do things in the United States. So I think it's really fundamental. I can't imagine any colleague I've had in any post who doesn't believe in and support the importance of talking about this and making it easier for Americans. That said, we're still a big bureaucracy and there's lots of room for improvement. So, you know, anything we can do to communicate that message, help people make sure their voices counted.
Wow, that's amazing. You've actually, you know, told me something new today, that if you have two parties and that are willing to come together to have an election watch party, that the embassy can definitely assist with that. So that's definitely new information to me, and I greatly appreciate that, because I'm sure that we can share that and see what can come of that. So thank you for that information.
Welcome.
I have another question for you, and it's around voter security. So as you know, counting the ballots is extremely, extremely, extremely important. Every vote counts. What are the options for U.S. citizens abroad to cast their ballot, and what measures are in place to ensure the security, integrity, and integrity of our vote? So we take our vote to the embassy at the designated times. We use the postage that the embassy or the FBAP has deemed. Tell us, what are the security measures, and how do we know that our vote has been counted or received in our elections office? You're muted.
There we go. It wouldn't let me unmute. So diplomatic mail is treated by the host government in a very special way. They can't open it, for example, right? So if I get a birthday card from my family, it's, you know, it comes in a sealed pouch that is protected every step along the line. It doesn't go through the customs process. And if I send a birthday card back, the same thing is true. So your ballots are treated the same way as all diplomatic and military mail. So we have a post office at every a mail service center, and it's exactly the same as if you were to drop your ballot off at a US post office in the United States. It's the same level of security. With respect to it knowing that it got there, right? So you know that it left. You have the same knowing if it got there that you would if you mailed it in the United States, right? So if you belong to a jurisdiction that provides you with a confirmation of any kind, then you would know. If you do not, then you would not.
Okay, that's understood. I've over the years we've used different county web addresses to ensure that our ballot was counted. So, you know, you put in your specific code, and then it will say, yes, your ballot was received. And that information is what has reassured me in so many ways that it's been received. The last question I have, and then we'll go to the chat, is for Councilwoman Martin Rogers, Dr. Martin Rogers. Can you discuss any changes to the voting procedures or regulations that voters should be aware of? So we know that you know, over the years, things have changed in the voter turnout, in the precincts, things of that nature. But any significant changes have occurred in the voter process that we should be aware of as expats?
Yes, and one in particular, which we call the voter suppression bill, is I believe the bill number is 202. So these are a few things that have come down. And with this bill, it makes it a felony for friends and neighbors or staff who work in shelters or nursing homes to help people receive or return absentee ballots. So if you have friends or loved ones in nursing homes, the nursing home individuals will not be able to help them submit their ballots in, even if the person has a disability. So that is something of importance with this voter suppression bill. The second one is the ballot drop boxes, which there were 107 ballot boxes across the state of Georgia. They have been reduced to 25. So if you know anyone that utilizes ballot drop boxes, they have to get them in the ballot box drop that is closest to them. So it has been shrunken or taken away from 107 to now 25 of those. Most of those ballot drop boxes are placed inside buildings and closed after business hours. But before the law was passed, most drop boxes were located outside, which gave people the option of dropping their ballots 24 hours a day. That is no longer an option. So people now have to find out where those ballot boxes are and make sure that they drop them off during normal business hours. So I believe our normal business hours are from 9 a.m. or 9 to 5 p.m. We have shortened runoffs. So if your candidate is in a runoff, the length of time for a runoff election has now been shortened. And the length of time for absentee voting, which pertains to you all, has also been shortened. So find out how long you have to vote absentee. The period changes, and there are also an additional identification requirements when voting absentee. So make sure that you receive information about that. Food and drink restriction. Normally, when you go to vote, it is a long line and it is hot outside. You are no longer permitted, either a poll worker or anyone working the polls. We cannot provide any water or food or drinks. And I remember during one big election, I was a poll worker, and people from the community would come out, and just to keep people encouraged to stay in line to vote, they'd pass out food, they pass out drinks. That is now prohibited and against the law. It makes it a misdemeanor for any person to give or offer any money or gifts, including including food and drink, to any voter within the polling place within 150 feet of the building, housing, or a polling place within 25 feet. So those are just some of the things that we are going to combat again this year. But just be aware that that bill 202, which we have coined as a voter suppression, because some of these things that are tied to this bill, it is really meant to suppress the votes of people. I always encourage people to vote early. When you vote early, your vote is counted. I mean, I was one of those people that, oh, I want to vote on election day. It's going to be more meaningful. It's going to be special. I have been voting early for the last several years because I know that my vote is counted and it's usually less of a wait and it's a more expedited process.
I think that what we found over the last couple of elections is the early voter turnout has been successful and significant. So it does decrease the wait on election day because we know that some things can happen as far as poll the voter I want to say the voter registration tools at the polls. They can be defective or not working, which in turn will increase the wait time for voters. So I agree.
And also another message is check your voting status, whatever state you live in, because I know in the state of Georgia, 190,000 individuals have been purged from the voter roll. So check your voter status, make sure that you are registered to vote.
Wow. Wow, amazing. I think that is the takeaway from here. We need to check our status and we need to ensure that we are compliant with the state requirements and the dates that we're required to submit our ballots, and both for the primary and for the actual election. So I want to thank you guys so much for just answering the questions and enlightening this group on the do's and don'ts and what we should be aware of in our voters election cycle. And I think at this time we have a few questions that for you. So I will turn it over to Soror Aisha Lusk, and she will help us with the facilitate the Q&A process.
Thank you. We do have a few questions. I believe this question is for Ms. Sear. Do ballots have to be returned via federal mail, or can they be returned using a private trackable carrier?
They can be returned with a private trackable carrier. It's not required to drop it off at the embassy or consulate.
Thank you. The next question is for Dr. Martin Rogers. We know that property values are connected to school ratings. How do we stay up to date on city council meetings, school board meetings, things of that nature, so that we're aware? Are these meetings available via Zoom? How do we do that, and how can we participate while abroad?
Oh, that's easy. Log on. I know the city that contact or email your mayor or the council representative for your area. Normally, most cities are now, like the one city, the city of South Fulton, they do Facebook online meetings. Most cities since COVID offer an online option and in-person option. So whatever city you are in or whatever state you are in, just go to that city's website. You can contact the city clerk and ask for a list of those meetings because, okay, the city of East Point, they have 3 meetings, the first, second, and third Monday of each month. Unless it's a holiday, they'll have the meeting on a Tuesday. But the city of College Park, they only have 2 meetings per month. So depending on which city that you are in, contact your local representative. You can start right there at the city clerk's office. Hey, when are the meetings? And they will provide you the meeting schedules. But I think since COVID, the good thing is we can watch these meetings from the comfort of our home and be a part of the discussion. One meeting that I was on the other night for the city of East Point, about 40 people were watching, but there were over 196 comments. But then you all also have that time zone, because I get so confused. I have a friend, she's like a sister, and she's there, Emily, she's there in Dubai with you all, and I get so confused. Sometimes I'll send her a text and it's midnight or 3 a.m. for you all. And even with Soror Riley, I was like, just tell me the time it is for me here. So I have yet to master your time. But contact any city clerk and find out when those meetings are so that you can participate. Same thing with the school board. Contact the board representative. They also have meetings that are now televised online. So it's easy for one to participate in this process.
Agreed. Oh my goodness, yes, I have to agree with the time zone, and I think that that is a challenge for expats, you know, understanding according to where you are, Eastern time zone, Central time zone, or California time, you know, it really does make a difference. And sometimes when the council meetings are taking place, it may be 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. Eastern time, which is extremely late when we start to speak of the time in Dubai or Qatar or some of the other GCC countries. So,
but most of those meetings are recorded, so you can watch them at your own leisure.
oh, perfect.
Because I go back all of the time just to view them at my leisure because I want the information. So most of those meetings, they should be recorded as far as a public Freedom of Information Act. They should be recorded and readily available to constituents.
So that's perfect. So you've eliminated all of our excuses as to why we're not informed. So thank you so much. I just want to, again, thank you for attending our voter awareness webinar this year, and we greatly appreciate you. Again, you have supplied us with so much knowledge, and I think that all of the takeaways that we've learned today will definitely incorporate them into this election cycle, as well as the next election cycle, which will be the presidential election. So we'll be well informed and ready for that. At this time, I will turn do you have any other questions for us or anything before? No, okay.
Can I just add one thing?
Yes.
Not about voting, but since you're such a group of accomplished, internationally minded individuals, if you're ever interested in the Foreign Service as a career, we're always looking for new Foreign Service officers. So careers.state.gov. There's generalist tracks with specialties in economics, politics, management, consular work, public diplomacy. There's special opportunities for medical officers or building specialists. So it's a really fascinating career. And we would welcome more people who are internationally and civic minded like this fabulous group. Thanks.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm sure that we can share this information in our group chat as well as our post-webinar email so that individuals who are attending, they can definitely go to that website. So thank you so much. Thank you. At this time, I will turn the meeting over to our chapter president of the Arabian Gulf Alumni Chapter, Soror Deidre White.
Well, good evening. And as we wrap up this wonderful event, I'd like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to each and every one of you for taking time out of your day to us with your presence. Events like these are at the core of our sorority. Social action is not just what we do, but it is who we are. I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to our Social Action Committee. Thank you for your hard work. Dedication. It is greatly appreciated. And let us not forget our incredible speakers, Dr. Sear and Dr. Martin Rogers. You have left us with knowledge and empowered us to do more. Again, on the behalf of the Arabian Gulf Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, we would like to thank you for taking time out of your busy day to join us for this wonderful webinar. Please don't forget to follow us on social media at AGAC DST for all of our upcoming events. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. Thank you.